When Laura married James 3 years ago, she thought she had her life figured out. She had a successful career as an interior designer, a beautiful home in suburban Seattle, and a man who seemed to adore her completely. But with James came his son, Ethan. At 19, Ethan was tall and lean with messy dark hair and a brooding look that often left Laura unsure how to approach him. He had moved in with them after his mother passed away, and though Laura had tried to make him feel at home, he always seemed to keep a polite but painful distance. Laura spent her days decorating other people's homes, while hers felt increasingly empty. James traveled for work, gone sometimes for weeks. Ethan mostly kept his room, and the only sounds from him were the faint strumming of his guitar late at night. Sometimes Laura would hear him softly singing, and the tenderness in his voice would make her heart ache in a way she couldn't describe. She knew she shouldn't think too much about it. One rainy Saturday afternoon, Laura decided to surprise Ethan with his favorite cookies. She remembered he had mentioned them once in a rare conversation over dinner, his eyes lighting up for a moment before he retreated into silence again. She thought maybe this gesture could melt some of the ice between them. She knocked on his door, balancing a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies in her other hand. There was no response. She called his name softly. Still silence. Laura hesitated. Then, telling herself she just wanted to make sure he was okay, she slowly turned the knob and stepped inside. Her heart stopped. Ethan was sitting on the edge of his bed, head buried in his hands, his shoulders shaking. He looked so vulnerable, so raw, that Laura felt a rush of emotion surge through her. She set the cookies on his desk quietly, not wanting to startle him. But he looked up, his eyes red and shining with tears. "Ethan," she said gently, taking a cautious step forward. He tried to wipe his face quickly, as if embarrassed to be caught in such a state. "I'm fine. Just leave me alone, please." But Laura couldn't. There was something in his eyes that called to her, something she hadn't felt in years. She walked over and knelt in front of him, her hands hovering near his. "You're not fine," she whispered. "Please talk to me." Ethan shook his head, but his hands betrayed him, trembling as he tried to keep them hidden. "It's stupid. You wouldn't understand." "Try me," she said softly, her voice almost breaking. He swallowed hard, glancing at her. "I feel so lost. Dad is always gone and I don't know where I fit in anymore. I feel like I'm just floating through life, unwanted, unnoticed." Laura's heart cracked open. She reached out and took his hands in hers. His fingers were cold, and when their skin touched, he jolted slightly. She didn't pull away. "Ethan, you are not unwanted," she said, her voice trembling. "You're important. You matter so much more than you know." Ethan looked at her, really looked at her, for what felt like the first time. His eyes traveled across her face, searching for sincerity. Laura felt her breath catch under his intense gaze. Her heart pounded so loudly she was afraid he might hear it. Suddenly, Ethan leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers. Laura closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of his breath, the softness of his hair brushing her cheek. For a moment, the world outside that room disappeared. No rain, no empty halls, no loneliness. Just two people, hearts beating too fast, words hanging in the charged air. Laura knew she should pull back, should remind herself she was his stepmother, that this wasn't right. But she didn't move. Instead, her hand moved up to his face, brushing away the tears that clung to his lashes. His skin felt warm under her fingertips, and she felt a shiver run through her body. "Thank you," he whispered, his voice low and husky. Before she could answer, Ethan pressed his lips softly to her forehead. It wasn't a romantic kiss, not really, but it sent electricity down her spine. She froze, not sure if she should lean in or pull away. He lingered there for a few seconds, his hands gripping hers tighter, as if afraid she might disappear. Finally, he pulled back just enough to look at her. His eyes were still full of pain, but there was something else there now, a fragile hope, a yearning for connection. Laura's breath trembled as she whispered, "It's okay. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere." He gave her a shaky smile, the first real smile she had seen on him since he moved in. Slowly, he let go of her hands and stood up, pulling her up with him. They stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth, but not touching. Laura felt a rush of warmth flood her cheeks as she realized how close they were. She reached up and smoothed his hair, an almost motherly gesture that turned into something far more intimate as their eyes locked again. For a second, it felt like time had stopped, the rain outside falling in a soft rhythm that matched the quickening beat of her heart. Ethan leaned in slightly, his eyes asking for permission, but Laura gently placed her hand on his chest to stop him. She could feel his heart thumping beneath her palm. "Ethan, we can't," she whispered, her voice trembling with desire and fear. He closed his eyes and nodded slowly, stepping back. "I know," he murmured. "I'm sorry." Laura shook her head, tears pricking her eyes. "Don't apologize," she said. "You're going through so much. I just want you to know I'm here for you. Always." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded again, his eyes softer now. Laura picked up the plate of cookies and handed it to him. He took it with a shy, almost boyish gratitude that made her heart ache again. They shared the cookies together that afternoon, sitting on his bed and talking quietly. For the first time, Ethan opened up about his mother, about the pressure he felt to live up to his father's expectations, about how music was his only escape. Laura listened intently, feeling her heart grow heavier and lighter all at once. Hours passed without either of them noticing. The rain eventually stopped, and a warm glow spread across the room as the sun began to set. Laura realized she had never felt so close to him before, so protective, so deeply connected. When James returned home that night, he found them in the living room, playing a board game and laughing softly. It was the first time in years that Ethan looked genuinely happy. James seemed relieved, though he didn't understand the depth of the moment they had shared earlier. That night, as Laura lay in bed next to her husband, she found herself thinking about Ethan's touch, his gaze, the fragile vulnerability she had seen in his eyes. She knew nothing would ever happen between them. It couldn't, and it shouldn't, but that didn't stop her heart from fluttering at the memory. She rolled over and closed her eyes, telling herself it was just an emotional moment, nothing more. But deep down, she knew a part of her had awakened, a part she didn't even know existed. In the following weeks, their relationship shifted subtly. Ethan began joining her in the kitchen, helping her cook dinner or wash dishes. Sometimes their hands would brush, and they would both freeze for a moment before laughing it off awkwardly. Other times, she would catch him looking at her when he thought she wasn't paying attention, his expression a mix of confusion and warmth. Laura didn't know where this new bond would lead, but she knew she would always be there for him. They had crossed an invisible line that day, not physically but emotionally, and neither of them could ever go back to how things were before. Through it all, Laura kept telling herself she was simply being there for her stepson, helping him through a dark time. And in many ways it was true. But when she lay awake at night, replaying the feeling of his forehead pressed to hers, she couldn't deny the deeper longing that now tugged at her heart. She reminded herself of her vows, of James, of the life they had built together. She loved her husband, she told herself firmly. Yet, the thought of Ethan, lost, gentle, and searching for love, haunted her in the quiet hours. By the time summer arrived, Ethan had started performing at local cafes. Laura went to every show, sitting in the front row, her eyes shining with pride. After each performance, he would look for her first in the crowd, his face lighting up when he saw her. They had built something new between them, something delicate and unspoken. In every soft glance and every shy smile, there was a warmth that wrapped around Laura's heart like a gentle, dangerous fire. She never told James about that rainy afternoon. Some secrets, she decided, were better left in the quiet space between two beating hearts. In the end, Laura and Ethan both knew they had crossed into dangerous emotional territory, but they also knew they would carry that day with them forever, a day when two lonely souls had found comfort in each other, if only for a moment. As Laura drifted to sleep each night, she would remember the way Ethan had looked at her that day, the way he had trembled beneath her touch, and the way she had felt truly seen for the first time in years. And though she would never say it out loud, in the deepest part of her heart, she knew she had walked in on her stepson struggling and had found herself struggling too, in ways she had never imagined.